Good afternoon and welcome to IFC Webinars. I'm your host, Richard Miller, and today's webinar is simplifying your agency's PPE tracking and inspection program. And thank you for being part of the webinar system here at IFC. And again, I'm your host, IFC staff member, Richard Miller. Next slide. Before we begin, as participants, audio is being broadcast using voice over internet protocol technologies through your computer speakers or headset. Please make sure that your speakers or headsets are turned up and the volume is on to max. Audience microphones will be muted throughout, and we will be helping you if you have any technical difficulties. Please contact IFC supports at IFC through webinars@ifc.org, or use the chat function and one of the staff members will assist you today. And today I'd like to make sure that you know what's coming up next at IFC. Next slide, please. Upcoming events here next week is the Community Risk Reduction Leadership Conference in Glendale, Arizona, with the Fire Life Safety section. A couple great presentations on community risk reduction, a two-day event on low-frequency alarms, and the updated research that's being done on those, as well as NFPA's putting a presentation on community risk reduction and the NFPA standard. June 5th and 9th will be the International Hazardous Materials Teams Conference in Baltimore, Maryland, with some great pre-con activities there. And again, a great conference to attend. If you've never been, please go, because it's a one-of-a-kind conference in the United States. 14th through the 16th is Fire Rescue International in Dallas, Texas this year. And I know Robbie and his team and will be there, and we'll be able to meet with people to talk about a lot of great things. And Vector's going to put on a lot of good stuff there. So please be on the look for some emails from IFC, but also from Vector about what they're doing in this space also. And then November 14th through 17th is Symposium in the Sun in Clearwater, Florida, put on by our Volunteer Combination Officers section. And again, that's a very a great conference to attend, small, in-person kind of resort and complex there. And it's a great learning, sharing experience with fire departments in the volunteer combination space. And again, all of that can be found at ifc.org/events. And you can look at all of our different conferences that are coming up, along with all the other great information. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Vector and let Matt and Robbie take control. So Matt, Robbie, over to you all.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate it very much. I love looking at that calendar you just shared. And I really do love the VCOS conference. Such an amazing time. One thing I do like about all of IFC's conferences, networking is such an important part of each one of those. At the VCOS conference, what an amazing location with a great group of people, very engaging, and we hope to see everybody there besides the one in Dallas. I'm here today with my great friend, retired Chief Matt Schrantz out of Illinois, and I appreciate allowing you all to allow us to come in and talk about a subject matter that's really important to us. So Matt, I appreciate you making time. I got a bunch of questions for you today. Before we get too deep into all of this, though, I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about what Vector really does for us. You know, we try to look at the train, prepared, and retain side of things. So the training, of course, both dear to our hearts, talking about having a training platform that not only has a great course catalog, but allow you to customize your own content and then put it together to meet those skills validation with a hands-on checklist of skills that you get to do. Large course catalog. We've been the agency leader in this area for a long time, but I want to stress that, you know, for both Matt and I, being 3 a.m. ready, it's great that we have courses, that you have great policy and procedures, but using that mobile app to make sure that people are able to perform all of these is really important. So prepare. We're going to be talking about Check It today, but it's going to be talking about our vehicle checks, our apparatus, and of course PPE, controlled substances. Great tool. I got a mobile app for it as well. But underneath the prepare section, it also has scheduling, our time and attendance tool, and then retain. We want to make sure everybody has a long career in the fire service, just like Richard and Matt and I did. But the piece of that is we want to make sure that not only are you there, but you had a good career by documenting those exposures. The things that we've been exposed to is not consistent with the rest of the public. We're exposed to the hazards more often than the general public. So we need to make sure we can keep track of those. Also, tracking those milestone career events, not just job promotions and those kind of things, but those types of calls that we go to that stick around in our own personal wellness. So just a great, easy way to keep everything tracked in Guardian Tracking. That's a little bit about what we're about, but I really thought we could talk about a few things. And I'll put you on the spot, Matt. I want to talk a little bit more about how you recommend following 1851 as we perform and track those inspections, how we manage the permissions within the system, but also looking at the inventory of all of our PPE. Is this a vital component? Everybody's got one or two sets of those things. How does all that work with that large inventory? But then also tracking that maintenance that we're doing to them, the cleaning schedules, and making sure that the record keeping is being followed and adhered to make sure that we can keep people in the program accountable for what we're doing. So I've been talking way too much this morning already. I thought maybe we could start off with that perform and track the inspections. So if you could, let's talk about a little bit about what 1851, the whole life cycle. You do a great job with this kind of stuff. Is that something you can help us with?
Yeah, absolutely. Robbie, I'm glad to be here with you to talk about it today. Like you said, I think this is really important, a really important topic because it's so evolving as time goes on. The standard has been there. The standard hasn't, per se changed. But what has changed is the importance that is at a focal point right now today. Not saying we did a bad job before, but now, there's a lot of hot topics in the fire service that weren't as prevalent before and discussed out there on a day-to-day basis. And when we think about that, things like how do we take care of our PPE and protect our people now becomes a little bit more evident, and as a discussion topic. When we're sitting around the kitchen table in the firehouse, when we're sitting at conferences, or we're sitting in meetings and we're talking about how are we going to better take care of people, that is where this comes into play. And I think in order to be successful in today's topic and provide a holistic solution to how can we fully work to take care of our people, we have to be able to understand what is included, not just in NFPA 1851, but also 1877, that standard for wildland gear. And there's other factors that are played in, but we're going to focus on these two primary topics today for wildland gear and structural turnout gear. First, we have to be able to identify when we purchase this gear. It's not just, hey, you know what, Robbie, you haven't had a new set of turnout gear in 10 years. We're giving you a new set of turnout gear. You're excited, and we take off running and put it in service right away. Has to have that initial documentation brought into, and placed somewhere, right? So we have to have a location, a landing zone where we're going to be able to start that initial tracking, that cradle to grave of it. And so that's where we're going to start off at the top of that wheel there, where we're going to document and deliver that purchased material. And who's it assigned to then? And what happens, through the life cycle of that gear? Oftentimes, I look at this in two different perspectives. Some agencies, you're issued a set or two of gear, and that gear lives with you through its entirety. Maybe you're a new firefighter. The department buys you a brand new set of gear, but your spare gear, it's a used set from somebody else. Well, that firefighter doesn't know the history behind that gear. And so we have to be able to have all of that documentation and that system of record for that particular equipment all in a centralized location. Furthermore, when we do that reassignment and that gear is assigned out to somebody, you gotta have in your mindset of we need to be able not only to document that reassignment or that initial assignment, but also that it got inspected. So if it is that used set of gear that we're going to issue out to somebody, or we're moving gear, maybe your agency, shows up at the scene of the structure fire afterwards, and the firefighters, you know, remove their structural gear and they bag it and it goes for cleaning, and they're issued a new set of gear. Whatever that program looks like for you, we have to be able to document that. Number one, you check that gear out when you're putting it back into service to make sure that it's good to go and that there's no issues, discrepancies, flaws within that PPE that may hinder your ability to operate successfully and aggressively in a fire scene. But then we have to be able to do those inspections, and that's where that assignment leads in, to that process of doing those inspections. Now, inspections ultimately include a number of things. We have our annuals. Are you doing that annual inspection internally? Or are we sending it to an ISP to complete that? What does our routine inspection program look like, and how do we document those items in those particular inspections? How do we document our cleaning? Just as important as the annual and the routine inspections that are found in NFPA 1851, but we also have to be able to document that, yes, that gear was clean. And that all of those steps in the cancer risk reduction and protecting our firefighters on the front line is documented appropriately. What happens when we have repairs, tears, snags on a coat, or even all the way down to the reflective striping when the stitching comes out and you got to get it replaced or repaired? How do we document that? How do we have that transparency across the organization ultimately? And then what happens at the end of its life cycle? That when we talk cradle to grave, that grave side of it, how do we dispose or document the retirements? All of that piece. There's one extension to that retirement and that disposal section. What happens when we're in an inherently risk-driven industry and profession? And what happens when somebody inevitably does get injured on the line, at an emergency scene? And maybe that gear has to go and be tagged and bagged and put away for evidence. How do we document and track all of that as well? So that all comes into a holistic approach. Ultimately, in the middle there, we got to be able to report. We have to be able to quickly and easily identify these issues and these items, be able to pull them up in a report and not just have it in a spreadsheet, but make it useful and impactful. So that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. But like I said, we have to be able to understand all of those contexts that are included in NFPA 1851 and NFPA 1877 to truly understand, when we're referencing and talking about various aspects today, why it's so important there. In the fire service, oftentimes, we're not sitting in front of a computer. And so as we introduce and we live a lot on technology-driven approaches now, we have to make that intuitive and streamlined for the firefighters, because they're not carrying around, the old, big computer screen out in the apparatus bay and setting up shop there at the card table in the back of the bay behind the engine and documenting these things. That just doesn't happen. It's not reality. So how can we streamline that approach to be able to make it successful? And more importantly, have the engagement and the buy-in from our folks. A lot of times it's being able to deliver a message out there that resonates with them on the importance of things like NFPA 1851, why we take care of our turnout gear, why we're documenting certain things so that they understand the importance and the magnitude behind it. But more importantly, when we talk about that buy-in and that engagement, everybody lives today on a mobile device. It's a commonality of what we're used to. And so when we think about that, having an application where we're not focused on, like that example I used before, where we're lugging that computer out on the card table in the apparatus bay, grab a tablet, grab your cell phone, whether it's a station cell phone or you have, allow them individuals in your department to utilize their own personal devices, but use an application that is universal, is capable of being downloaded on multiple different platforms, whether you're an Android or you're an Apple user, giving you that capability and functionality to be able to download and install that application right there on your mobile device, walk around the apparatus, complete those checks, go up to your turnout gear. As you're putting it on the apparatus, being able to go out and do that routine inspection right from that mobile application. So being able to make it intuitive for those folks is going to bring that buy-in to them. More importantly, not just doing that routine inspection, but we need to be able to provide an opportunity for those employees, whether they're a firefighter, a driver, company officer, battalion chief, doesn't matter. Whether it's an end user or an administrative perspective, we got to put those resources at their fingertips to have success in this program. And by doing that, part of that includes being able to monitor those specifications, track when it's in service and out of service, and easily change that serviceability right from the mobile application, but also see the detailed specifications and inspection history, as well as when they're coming due. So if you have a notification coming up that it's sending you that notification, we can easily identify that. We can get those tasks completed in a reasonable amount of time. But when we look more in depth from that, what happens when we actually go in and do those inspections? It doesn't make a successful outcome if we make things hard. So we want to make things really intuitive, really streamlined, really impactful, and simplified. So where I don't have to go up to my turnout coat and fill out one checklist, and I have to go out of my pants and fill out another checklist. Being able to capture all of that information into one centralized location, select the item that I'm inspecting. Maybe I'm inspecting my primary and secondary pair of pants at the same time, and then doing those pass fails to identify, are these actions and these specific items good to go, or do we have issues? What happens when those issues occur and now we have to document things? And what happens? We're going to talk today of that life cycle of this program and why it's impactful to have that, what I oftentimes refer to as closing the loop. We always, we look at any NIOSH reports, when we look at any of these various, data-driven documentations that are out there. And one of the focal points is always communication. And that communication drives into even the pre-active approaches of things like turnout gear, documentation and inspections. What happens when I come in today, I document my routine inspection and I documented that something was not right with my turnout gear. Did the right people get notified? Did I have the accessibility to be able to appropriately document those items? And that's what we're here to talk about, is having a solution, having a platform that provides you not just go in here, hit pass, hit fail, but if I hit fail, can that piece of equipment still be used? Or if I failed that particular item, is it so catastrophic that it completely takes it out of service? That's one aspect of it. A second aspect of it comes into the fact of what happens when I have to document that tear or that damage to that shell of that helmet. And now it gets routed to Robbie, and Robbie says, well, wait a minute, Matt, I don't see why you failed this particular item. What was the damage incurred? The description doesn't meet what I'm seeing. Okay, well, let me take a picture and upload it so that there's visual documentation as well. All of those aspects, when we do those routine inspections, all are extremely important for a successful outcome. And so I think it's important to notate when we're talking about those inspections, whether it's from the engine bay floor and we're out there on the apparatus, working on these routine inspections, or it's in depth as a follow-up and annual inspection, we have a holistic approach there that's defined.
I really liked how you shared that we're able to customize all of these checklists. I mean, helmet's a helmet, basically, coat's a coat, all the rest of those things. But how I want to design all of those, to me, is really spot on and important, because you know what? Maybe you want to, in your previous slide, you showed that we're checking each one of these items one at a time. I could just say, yeah, is my helmet good? Is it free of cracks, defects? It's just one. You get to decide, not how Vector loves it. And I'm not going to lie to you, Matt. I do miss being at that table at the back behind the engine. I was just watching a video today, and I was like, oh, I miss those days. solving the world's problems. I love that. So I thought maybe next we could talk a little bit more about managing the permissions, because to me that's really important in not only managing permissions truly by their role, because sometimes you may have a firefighter who wouldn't normally have access, like the company officer or a battalion chief, but they're just spot on. They love this additional duties. Is that something that we can handle with Vector Check-In?
Yeah, very much. So, Robbie, you bring up a great, point because, and it has to be very flexible for all agencies because not every agency functions the same way. I look at, you get a larger agency, they're going to have that quartermaster program or maybe a, cadre of quartermasters in that division. You go to a smaller agency, you might, maybe that's you as a quartermaster, Robbie, but you're also wearing 4 or 5 different hats in that agency. So we have to be able to have that flexible approach to where it can be specific for each individual agency to meet their need. And with Vector Check It, it gives us the ability to create those various roles and furthermore assign out those permissions. So as an example here, we have the ability to drill that down to our standard equipment versus our PPE. Who can manage that equipment for each of those equipment categories? Who can perform those individual inspections on either the standard or the PPE equipment? As we look at another role, well, you know what? This individual, they have full access to everything across the board, where the previous individual only had the ability to, manage the PPE rather than the standard equipment. Gives them the ability, if I have the control under my profile and I can do those standard equipment inspections as an example, doesn't take away the value of me being able to see what equipment our department has. But in the event that I have that restriction, maybe I don't need to see that side of the house. I can filter in, and as I remove those permissions, it gives me the ability that I can only see what I have permission. So it does become a very permission-driven approach in there. Now, just for clarification, when we talk about the context of what it means to manage versus do those inspections. So doing an inspection allows me to come in and do my routine inspections, any of those customized checklists that we're going to be doing in Vector Check-In. But managing, what that means is that I can actually manage the information that's provided for that particular equipment. And you'll see at the top of the screen there that import versus export equipment. So as an example, if I can view that equipment because I have the ability to complete inspections, I just lose the opportunity to import and export equipment because I can't manage it. Same thing, if I open a particular piece of equipment, managing allows me to reassign that to a new employee. So that might be your quartermaster or your logistics folks. Gives you that ability to be able to see that information. So it does become a very permission driven approach based off the needs of the organization. So you can filter down who has access to what areas and what do they need to accomplish within there.
And that's really what you expect out of a modern day piece of software. Being that permissions based is really such an important part of all those items in there, and being able to make them change as you need to as well without having to call support. We're taking care of all that. I love that. So I figure we go next into managing the PPE inventory. So I'm still a Navy guy, so quartermaster will always be my navigation people. In the Navy, we called it our chop, who is our supply officer. Who knows where all these names came from, Old Navy. But as you're talking about the quartermaster, that's such an important part of role because we have to have spares so in case someone gets something damaged, like we were talking about before the start today. So how do we handle all that?
Yeah, absolutely. The management piece of that, it really drives in when we think about our entire program. If you don't have that structure and that control built in, then it's a recipe for disaster. So management really becomes the true definition behind success here because you don't want to have to be scattering around between stations or locations or is this piece of equipment assigned out, or is it in our spare inventory or our storeroom? That's the wrong time when something happens to start running around and playing the game of where can I find this information. So being able to, more importantly, manage this information and truly define a lot of aspects in a short amount of time and in a few clicks is really the forefront of it. Same thing when we're back into that particular equipment pool. Here in this case is our PPE equipment pool. You will see that everything is categorized based on its specific need. And oftentimes we get that question of why do you guys at Vector Solutions approach it in that perspective? Well, very simple. We have a lot of pieces that go on that ensemble. Depending on your agency and what each particular agency assigns out, that ensemble of PPE may be anywhere from 9 pieces of different equipment to 11 or depending on all those different aspects that you are going to assign out. And that's different for every agency. But we know that, you know what, whether you have 30 people in your organization or you have 100 people, now you start to take that and times it by the number of people, that list really starts to grow and it really starts to be very cumbersome. So if we can categorize those items, so if I'm just looking for that structural coat, I can just look at my structural coats and search for that. If I'm just looking for a helmet or a pair of pants or boots or my particulate hoods, even though they may be a very, diverse commodity where we're transferring those out and we're washing those hoods all the time, being able to track where all of those are at without searching through a lengthy list of items becomes a really top priority for us. More importantly is what does it look like for the management of those particular items? So when we think about items where we have schedules that are identified that are requirements of the organization to be met. So I require you to clean your gear a minimum of 2 times a year, outside of when we clean it after a structure fire, to make sure that we get all those contaminants out. Maybe we have a routine inspection schedule. Maybe we have an annual ISP inspection that we want to assign out and have that schedule attached. On the right-hand side of the screen there, under those red bubbles, you're going to be able to identify what's overdue. Robbie, don't pick on me. You can see I got a lot of overdue assignments here, but I put that in there for context because I want to be able to show you that as things are not getting done, they're going to turn red. Time out. Wait a minute. We got to change. We got to get better at this. We got to get these number of overdue assignments down because we need to take care of that expensive PPE that's assigned out to us. Maybe it's coming due for expiration and we're 30 days out or we're 60 days out. Whatever you want that notification threshold to be, we can have that a different color. So it can identify as an amber color saying, hey, wait a minute, Robbie or Matt, we got a piece of equipment that's coming due for expiration. Now, when we look in depth at that equipment pool, this is where we're able to categorize those items. We can identify what's retired, what's in service, what's out of service, what's coming due for expiration. Excuse me. We can also have the opportunity that we can drill down to all those specifics. So I talked from the mobile application part that we can be able to see all of the specs on that particular set of gear or that particular piece of equipment if you want to get that granular with it. This gives you that ability to see it from the platform side in a management approach as well. So if I'm that person in the organization that's responsible to manage and oversee that inventory of gear, I need to make sure that things like my make, my model, my year, what the cost, what the lifespan is. The lifespan is pretty common based off the NFPA standard, but maybe you're an organization that instead of that 10-year mark, maybe you want to replace it at 5 years or 7 years. Maybe you're an organization that goes to a lot more structured fires and that gear's life cycle, the overall life expectancy of that is much smaller than the other organizations that might be using this. So we still give you that ability to customize that approach and that lifespan. But what's important is to have all of that information. I always say that the more data you put in, the more you're going to get back out. So if we fill all this stuff out, when we get towards the end of today's presentation, we talk about that data, the analytics that you're getting back out of the system. This is where that's all driven from. So if we put this in from the beginning, we have that cradle to grave historical log of all of that information. Gives you that ability to drill that down and also have barcode scanning. So all manufacturers for PPE, they put that barcode in the code. You can walk up to it with that mobile app, scan that barcode, and now when you go do that routine or that annual inspection, all I got to do is use that barcode scanner on the mobile application, scan it, pull that piece of equipment right up within a matter of seconds, document our inspection, and we move about our day. It doesn't make a long, overbearing approach for the end user or the people that are responsible to complete those inspections. How do we track the service status? So gives me the ability, is this piece of equipment in service? Is it out of service? Do I need to retire it out of our inventory and we're no longer going to use it? Who is it assigned to? So again, I talked quite a bit about that previously. If I have a set of turnout gear that's assigned to me and now that becomes a spare set and it goes to the storeroom, I need to know that it went to the storeroom. So I not only I can run an inventory report to see where all my pieces of PPE are at, but more importantly, now if something happens, now if we have that situation that we all hope doesn't happen in our organizations, but now we need to run that report, I need to know who it was assigned to, when it was assigned to, for how long it was assigned to it, and when it was reassigned. And that information will all be brought together within the reporting mechanism of Vector Check-It. Right here, it gives us the ability to see not just our item log when all those movements are occurring, but I can also see all the inspections that were completed, all the inspections that were initiated and not completed. Did somebody start their routine inspection? They caught a run, they didn't get back and complete it. They left it open. We need to go in and clean that stuff up. All the work orders, the tickets that we're going to talk about next, what happens with that routing of that maintenance for that. And ultimately, all the files and specifications that come directly from the manufacturer. How do we keep track of those items without, having 15 filing cabinets and all the papers are flying out of the drawer and we don't, we start throwing stuff away because we don't have enough room to store it. This allows us to upload all of that information. We don't have to, have access papers flying all over the place. We can store it in one centralized location here for its entirety. Now, when we talk about the inspection side of that, this is where we're going to be able to customize and build out that inspection approach to how you want to see it for your particular organizations, giving you the ability to say, you know what, when I do that routine or I do that annual inspection on that piece of equipment, what do I want to track? We will give you a direction. We will have templated checklists that are in the site that give you the ability. In fact, you see the checklist library just kind of shaded out to the lower left-hand corner of that text bubble there. But we have those ability for you to get started in that program. We have customized checklists that follow the NFPA standards, but it gives you that ability to still customize it from there. So you could come in and say, you know what, I want to include my boots and my ear flaps and my hood, and we assign out a flashlight, or we assign out a radio strap that I want included in that inspection. Maybe it's additional eye protection, whatever that is that you're looking to accommodate. We give you the groundwork to get started, but it ultimately comes back to you customizing that inspection so that it's meeting your organization's needs and that you're ultimately accountable for that. Frequency, we talked before about those notifications. So how do we set that inspection scheduling up so that we get notified when these items are not completed, so that we can have those reminders and stay focused? We all live in busy lives. It's easy to get sidetracked. The folks that are on the line still and they're out there running calls day in and day out, they get busy days. And maybe that inspection was due today, but they had a really busy day out of the norm. They need to get to that inspection the next day. Well, we have that notification, so there's a reminder there for them to be able to complete that. And then again, ultimately, we can determine what are you looking to accomplish within that inspection. So when we start adding all those various equipment pools into the mix, now we need to make sure that we have the appropriate, checklist items at the bottom. So if we require, a pass fail on something that's out of the normal NFPA 1851 standard, but you consider it part of your PPE, we want to make sure we can accommodate that. And so that's where you have the ability to customize and add additional inspections, sections, steps, whatever you need to meet your need of your organization. It truly becomes a customized approach for you after we teach you how to do that train the trainer perspective. Again, here you'll have the ability to also determine very important piece. When is that failed behavior, that failed condition come to light? So as an example, if I have a contamination from hazardous materials to that coat, maybe that's a failed behavior. I need to get that out of service. I need to get it to a particular vendor to get it, cleaned in depth because it's more than what I can do internally. Now we allow that notification and that process to start turning in the back end because we've pre-built that algorithm out already from a management perspective before the end user. So we don't have to rely on all that extra information at the user level. We simplify that by building that algorithm out for them.
You made it seem really easy. Is it really that easy?
It is. It is.
That is awesome because nobody
you can even do it with your eyes closed.
I love that. I also like the ability to utilize your either the manufacturer's barcode, QR code, those kind of things, or versus creating those items. There's so many free tools out there today. And the mobile app comes with that barcode or QR code reader built in. So you're not buying any additional equipment that's needed. I love being able to see, exactly what you have right now and where it's at, especially, if you're putting caches at each station for people to draw from to see what that looks like so you can get replacements back out there. That's pretty cool. I like all that. So next, I figured we could talk a little bit more about the maintenance and cleaning tracking. The one thing I forgot to bring up before we brought up this one here was I do like when you're talking about the notifications earlier, being able to look at vector scheduling to see who's filling that role. So it's just not, hey, this is going to go to the C shift battalion. Who's actually filling that seat today? Maybe Robbie's off today and I need, Richard to come in and fill in. Richard's going to get notified, not me. I love that ability that's built into the system. If you have more than one,
you don't want to be notified when you're on the beach in Bora Bora that somebody needs to do their cleaning, huh?
You know as well as I do, no country would let me come in on their beaches. I have to stick to American beaches.
No, you bring up a really good point there because it goes back to what I said before about communication, right? And it leads into this next topic of that maintenance and cleaning. But as we think about that holistic approach with it, nobody wants to be bothered on their time off. And like you said, being able to integrate vector check it in with vector scheduling to receive and identify who's working. Hey, Robbie, you're responsible for this, but that beach at Bora Bora is calling your name. We don't want to send you that notification. And so it all starts to tie together and make it, what I refer to as a more fluid process, because now we're not waiting for things to be missed. Action items can be addressed immediately right on top of each other. And again, that closing the loop, we can make sure that these things are taken care of. And when I talk about that closing the loop, it's the ability to pull into those tickets, those work orders. And with our tickets module at Vector Check It, doesn't matter if we're looking at equipment, at apparatus, at PPE, EMS supplies, communications equipment, doesn't matter. It all functions the same way. But you can customize and drill that down to be very granular for what each division or each area of your organization is looking to capture in that information. Here's an example. I have my PPE repairs. I have a to-do, a scheduled, in repair, and back in service. This allows for complete transparency across the organization. So if I created an issue with my structural coat, I see the inventory number. So if I'm trying to quickly reference just by this screen here, I can see that, hey, that particular repair is scheduled for that coat C01-15. I see that the other one, C02-12, it's in repair, and there was a rip in that coat. So I know it's probably off at the manufacturer getting repaired. But now take that and flip that coin a little bit. Now I have to focus in on what's being done for my cleaning program. So in my organization, as an example, twice a year, we would, even though we had things like a diesel exhaust, removal system, we still felt that it was important that twice a year that gear gets cleaned. And we wanted to make sure that we were trying to reduce as much of that carcinogen contaminant as we could, even though we had other measures in place. Sideline of that, we had a policy and a process in place that you went to a fire, you had to clean your gear when you came back. We would get you spare gear during that process so that you were still up and able to function. But how do we track that? And that's where the important piece comes. This gives us the ability to customize this approach that was different from our repairs because they're two different areas. Same equipment, just two different areas. So in this case, did I request that you get your gear cleaned? Did we schedule that cleaning because it's that twice a year cleaning? So we can create those work orders and assign them out to people saying, hey, you know what, Robbie, it's coming up for your biannual gear cleaning. I'm going to schedule this out. I'm going to assign it to you. You get that notification. You get that gear documented, that cleaning documented after it's been cleaned, and we can move about. We reference when we have situations that happen where now you get exposed to hazardous materials and you got to send that to an external provider to have a more in-depth cleaning, or we're going to clean that internally. So all of that functionality can be tracked just by simple drag and drop of those boxes. But it's taking all of that information and it's tying it back to the system of record for that particular coat. So as an example, if I've got my coat C02-12, it's in internal cleaning right now. It's documenting that particular coat has been cleaned. If you reference back to the previous screen, there was an issue, there was a rip or a tear. That's also going to be part of that system of record as well in there. So now if something ever happened to me and I was wearing that particular coat and I pulled it up, I would see all those cleanings. I would see when they were done, any notations, any important information that's a part of that documentation, but I would also see all of the other inspections, repairs, etc., that were included in there. So now we can start to lay out that cradle to grave of that, from assignments and reassignments to inspections, from annual to routines to the cleaning, and it allows me to track all of that very in depth. But I can also drill it down. And like I said before, get really granular. So now we have that rip in that particular coat. Well, what happened? We can send a brief narrative of what happened. We can upload images as well. I can track costs that are incurred with that. So we're trying to budget and forecast for next year. I can run reports and data and analytics to be able to identify what did we spend this year on those expenses for those coats, more than we've done in the past. Now, this is the ability for, as I talked before, about being able to customize that workflow. So again, this isn't calling your support team up and saying, how do I do this? We're there to support you. We are all the time. But this gives you the ability to go in and configure your system. If you have subtle changes, or if you have a new process in place and you want to add new functionality into your site, gives you that ability to go in and change that process that you've had, create new processes, alter things, all at your fingertips. So you can go in there. You know what? Robbie and Matt were in charge of PPE cleaning this year, and now Richard's going to be in charge of it. It gives us the ability to go in, edit that, and put the new folks in that are going to now be in charge of that. So it keeps it nice and clean and concise for you.
I love that. I'm such a visual person, but just trying to speed that process up of when something's taken out of service, notifying everybody, being able to create that work order, add that image, add the video, whatever it may be, but then see it all in one spot where it's going. To me, I love that side of things so much. That just makes super simple processes. Well, super simple. Hard. I mean, it's never super simple when you're managing tickets and everything else, but you sure did make it simple there. Can we talk about the record keeping, what this looks like, and moving forward with there? Do you mind?
Yeah, certainly. So this is it's really streamlined and simple. And that's what I like about it, because I don't want an overly complex process. But what is important is all of the pieces that we talked about today, from the time we bring that PPE into the organization, every cleaning, every assignment, every inspection, every crazy item that you could think of known to to Earth that could happen with that. We want tracked to that system of record. And then we want, after we track it, we want to easily be able to come in and see that information. So things like that equipment overview report. This gives us the ability to use the controls at the top, which is your filtering capability, to specifically get information and items out. So now you don't have to go in and search. If I'm just looking at a coat, or I'm just looking at when it was cleaned, or I'm just looking at its inspections, I can filter those items out and just see that. I can also look at the top for your employees. I can see, you know what? Robbie's the third person there on that graph, and I can see how many times he's been in compliance with this. I can see that he has it looks like one that's either not been done or it's due soon. So I'm going to go on the error of caution there and say it's coming due for soon, because Robbie, he's usually on top of his stuff. So it gives you that visualization. Expiring equipment reports. So I always reference this as the fire chief's best friend. When we start to sit down for our budgeting process for our annual fun little project there, this is going to be your best friend, because now as we're including all of those specifications and costs and information in, this is where it all comes together. This is where I can again filter with the controls at the top, but it's going to give me an overview. What am I looking like for gear replacement for next year? What does 3 years out look like? What does 5 years out look like? And also, what did it look like for maintenance and repairs? How much did we spend on our annual ISP inspections? Did we have to replace a gear extractor, and what was those costs incurred? So when we start to think about all these different aspects to an NFPA, PPE program, and the different, commonalities there, this allows us to start to bring all of that together with this report, because now as things are coming due for expiration, I'm not searching records. I'm not looking at a bunch of very basic spreadsheets. I can filter this just to what I specifically need to know, and it's delivered out to me. And then ultimately, in the last and most impactful report, I saved the best for last, there is that event log. So we talk about all those action items that are going on from the time we purchase a set of PPE to the time we retire it out. All those reassignments. When did it go to the storeroom? When was it cleaned? When was it inspected? What did the routine inspection program look like? Were we on time? Were we overdue? All of that information now gets put into this report. I can run this for our entire department. I can run it for a specific person. I can filter this down to specific piece of that ensemble as well. But I get the opportunity to build that customized report with these data points that you see, so that you're truly filtering and building a report to what you need to see at your fingertips when it matters most. The time to run these reports, especially if it's in the event of somebody gets injured or something happens, you don't want to be struggling or searching around how to find that information. You want to be able to log into the system within a few seconds, select the specific items in the filter that you need, deliver that report out, and print it and move about your day. And that's where this all comes together. All those different aspects we talked about today, from the user friendliness out there on the front line, all the way through the duration of being able to manage that overall program from a logistics or a quartermaster approach, now delivering it out into a report.
I tell you what, we could probably spend all day talking about this one area here. Having those streamlined reports, having dashboards that have a real function behind them, besides just trying to show something. We live in a data required age where we need those analytics to be able to justify all of these expenses. Money is always getting tighter and tighter on agencies on there. I want to give everybody a quick reminder. We're going to be bringing Richard back with us, and we're going to be talking about questions that you may have. I see a few of them that have popped up. Please do not hesitate to put those questions out there. But, we want to spend more time with you. We talk about an awful lot, but we'd rather focus a little bit more doing this with you and how your agency operates and how we may or may not be able to help you. I'd rather find all that out really early. So if you could give us a shout, 1-800-840-8048. and they'll put you in touch with one of our account executives who we can spend some time with and give you a proper demo of the product. But the easiest way for me, Matt, just go to vectorsolutions.com and up in the upper right-hand corner, request a demo, fill that out. We'll get back with you just as quick as possible. I love looking at the attendees list today, Richard. There is a tremendous amount of people from all over North America. That's one of the things that I love about Matt and I both being IAFC members ourselves, is it's a true partnership with people across the United States. I saw a few questions come in. I didn't know if you wanted to throw one out there and we can hopefully get an answer for you.
Oh, absolutely. And thanks again to both of you for the great information. And I think this really brings the practical application to, the daily use that is out there. So a couple things that I saw that, that have popped up as a former training officer, issuing, gear to the new recruits that come in, getting them the right gear, the right size, and then tracking that gear through the, the training, because it takes, we all know it takes an abuse, and they're, whether it's career or volunteer, they're still going to have a lot of, wear and tear that occurs in the daily, process. So getting them, replacement gear is really critical. And, what is, how best can we, maximize the use of the information for repair requests, replacement, the on-time delivery kind of stuff that has to occur in the academy or training center?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, because oftentimes I think a lot of that is forgotten, right? And so when you have, I always say technology to support that and to almost guide us down a direction that gives us the opportunity to bolster and focus more about other things. You hit it on the head when you're in training, and Robbie's your candidate. I know it's many years ago, Robbie, but that's all right. When Robbie's your candidate coming in, you're focused on 100 other things, but you have to issue him that gear. And so being able to not worry about where are we going to get this from, or do we have the right sizes, or do we have to order a new set of turnout gear, and being able to go in there and run simple reports by filtering the specifics of what you need, it simplifies that process. And often, like I said, it lets us focus on that 100 other things that are more important going through our mind, that we have to train those new firefighters, or the ongoing, approach of that.
I know as a training officer, we incorporated in a lot of the regular practices that occurred at the station level, whether volunteer or career, and so the, what their responsibilities are. So as the end user, what can I see in the system to track my gear? Say I've torn the pant and I need to have it sent in, and that's not a quick fix. So what can I see as the end user to know where it is? Do I get that replacement gear? I mean, that's obviously department driven, but what do I get to see if I'm that firefighter?
Yeah, so from an end user perspective, is that transparency is important, right? We don't want to limit what people can see, but it all goes back to those permissions we talked about in that second section. And so with Vector Check It, the system administrator is going to define who has the ability to see what items. So maybe in the event that there is a situation where you don't want a firefighter to see something, we can filter that down and remove those permissions. But traditionally, right, in the transparency model, that firefighter, they come in on that mobile app, they have the full capability, they log into the platform, that gives them that full capability to be able to see everything that's going on with their turnout gear. So I can see the specifications, I can see the inspection history and the gear that's issued to me. I can see who it's been issued to previously. I have the ability to see all those tickets. So if I created a ticket and it went to you, Richard, I'd be able to log in 2 weeks from now and see what part of the process that's in as it's being updated. Now, it does have to be updated, right? So there is that caveat to it, because if we throw something in the to-do menu and we don't update it, that it went to the ISP to get, cleaned, or to the repair center to get repaired, and we're not updating that process along the way, it's not going to automatically update. So you still, whoever's managing that part of the administrative part of it still has to do those updates. But from the end user perspective, they're going to have full capability and that transparency methodology to be able to see that process along the way until it's back in their possession.
So early on, you talked about the importance of documenting exposures, and today's world for us, from starting eons ago in the fire service, it's a different world, but it's so critical today with the cancer registry, because that's one of the critical questions is, can you document your exposures? But one of the key questions in the registry is, what PPE gear have you had? Fortunately, I worked for IFC to help develop that initially. It was on the first, working group to put that together. So we really worked hard to look at how to make sure that people could track that, especially for us that have been in the service years ago when this wasn't something that we did. We didn't track our gear. You went to the fire station, they gave you a set of gear that was in the closet. And today, we want to know what that gear was, where it's been, what its use was, when it was, clean and such. And I think a Vector Solutions kind of program really does do exactly this. Now it helps track that for exposures and then protects you, the end user, from any potential issues.
I love that, Pat. That part of that as well. Just to add on to what Matt was talking about. I think as training officers, when we're running an academy, being able to identify which gear, we generally in a recruit academy, even just a handful of weeks, we're putting that gear through a couple of years worth of abuse. We know many are renting gear or using non-compliant gear for all that search and rescue. And before they get to the burn building, they get their final set of gears. We're not tearing up, but the new stuff. But when we look at that, what gear is lasting, which one isn't, or last class, this was the cost of the repairs for this class, we really put a focus in on a lot more hands-on and less classroom time. What was the outcome of that gear? How many sets did we destroy? How many sets did the repair facility actually condemn and wouldn't even send back to us as an option? I think a lot of that plays in. So we have to keep track of all of that so we can make the right decisions on picking gear, or not even just picking the gear, the spec of gear. So if you want to stay within a certain manufacturer or those kind of things, you can keep track of all of those and use the data to put forth what that really looks like. And so just wanted to add on to that one there. And I appreciate that. Matt worked on creating our national registry, cancer registry activity. It's in it's free to import into your Target Solutions site. So you can assign that out, get everybody to listen to the USFA podcast that was done talking about it. Give them the information on why it's so important. We're not capturing your information, but you can get in there and log into that website and get listed. We've all, after our long careers, have ailments, whether it's a ringing in our ears or I don't have a thyroid anymore. It's dead. I'm taking pills every day. Why did that stop? Well, now we know, but we need to put those things in because it puts me in a category, even being more prone to various other types of cancers because of how my thyroid went away. So I think that to me is really important. And I'm really supportive of the IFC and all the efforts they've done on cancer registry and all that. So sorry, off that soapbox.
No, that's a great soapbox as part of this, because that's a great effort. And IFC is very excited to see some of the great outcomes and hopefully make some positive change. So the analytics you just talked about, I think, drove another question here. Is that metrics of what the wear and tear is, the damage, the cost per person, not just at the academy, but, in the station as well, so I can look out and project in my budget, okay, this gear isn't, going to last 10 years, as Matt was saying. So Matt, this is great information. I think it's really good to be able to do that. So.
Especially when you look at an agency like yours, Richard, where you came from. you know, is certain battalions or certain stations within a battalion, are they a heavy response versus, you know, to structure fires versus a crew that's gone out there doing vehicle extrication, or the truck company running through all that? But I interrupted you, man. I'm sorry.
Nope, you're all good.
Yeah, and well, in the Nova, Northern Virginia region, that's why each of the agencies went to a standardized gear, you know, component, so you could swap out between departments. If one department maybe had an over, you know, exposure or something like that, you know, they were able to get gear from other agencies to swap that out. But you know, it made the gear process a whole lot more usable. But then again, tracking the gear and having that information is critical.
Very.
Yeah. Matt, Robbie, any closing thoughts as we kind of wind down Vector's presentation today and this great information?
You know, I want to thank you for the opportunity. I think this is an important piece to get out there, an important message, and it's more than just how can you track it. But I like to approach it as, what are we doing that's working today, but also what can we do as a fire service to also bolster and make a more safer and better environment. That is truly identified in the entirety of that program. So, you know, it's one thing to be able to have a platform and a process in place to where you can track all these different aspects. But like I said, what are we doing currently, but what can we do in the future to make that program better? And I think that's what the message I want to share with everybody today as you're leaving is, just take a step back, look at your program. What are you doing? What do you think would work? What do you think, you know, maybe won't work? Because again, not every organization is going to be able to adopt the same process and program across the board. But I think what's valuable with it is taking that holistic look at what are you doing and what can we do better at to clean that process up and make sure that everything is tracked, and that more importantly, we get to buy in by having a streamlined platform and program out there for your firefighters, your company officers on the front line.
Great job, Matt. I really do appreciate it. And I want to just thank everyone again for joining us. Don't forget, go to vectorsolutions.com, click request that demo, or you probably already have a relationship with one of our salespeople. Please reach back out to us. If you're a current client, please join our workshops that we do in each of the states throughout the year. We really do appreciate it all. And thank you, Richard and IFC, for allowing us to come in and talk today.
Great. Thank you both for presenting today, and we look forward to future presentations, activities, and again, I look forward to the activity at FRI this year with you all and your company, and I think it's going to be a great great FRI this year, and hopefully we'll get to meet a lot of other good people. So on behalf of the International Association of Fire Chiefs, I want to thank everyone for attending today, and you'll receive a survey here shortly. Please take that survey. Let us know how we did, what we can improve. It helps us. It also helps people like Matt and Robbie, so we know where we're going next. But again, congratulations and good job, everyone, and be safe out there. Thank you very much on behalf of IFC.
Thank you, everyone.